Hey everyone, today we're going to be ranking the licensed maps of Dead by Daylight on how well they were adapted from their source material. We're going to rank the adaptation on how visually faithful it is to its source material, but also how well the devs adapted the environment for the setting of Dead by Daylight and its systems. Starting off, we have Badham Preschool. It feels bad honestly, as I've ranked all of the A Nightmare on Elm Street content in terms of adaptation last, but really it's just a very poorly adapted license. The thing is, Badham Preschool actually looks very faithful to how it does in the film, especially from the outside where it's easier to distinguish its look. There's also cool secrets on this map like the small crawl space found in the basement, and inclusions of areas like the boiler room taking up most of the lower level of the school itself. Aside the main structure, we have sprawling areas of streets and houses. All of them feel quite generic and likely just asset pulls from other maps and not really tailor-made or adapted for this map. The main structure is meant to be the key feature of most maps, and they did do it well here, so I don't want to say this is a completely awful adaptation, but it does stray a little too much into generic environment to me in terms of the rest of the map, especially as the main structure only takes up a small portion. To me, this map also lacks something particularly telling of it being from A Nightmare on Elm Street. There's no distinct indicator that we're on Freddy's map or in Quentin's hometown. It just feels like quite a generic area that could be easily mistook if someone didn't know what this place was. Haddonfield, although having a decent visual faithfulness, is not that great in terms of adaptation and doesn't quite work with Dead by Daylight and its systems too well. There's always been things that irked me about Haddonfield, small things like the weird houses which don't really feel like houses. This was a good change that they made to the Thompson house in the Realm Beyond updates, by making it look like an actual house, where before it was this weird box structure with a very strange layout. Haddonfield really needs to have that treatment, because at the moment it's an assortment of strangely laid out and poorly textured structures. With that said, this thing hasn't been updated since 2016 to the best of my knowledge, and broadly aside the houses and their insides, the map looks pretty great, and definitely captures the feel of Haddonfield and its streets. The atmosphere is definitely boosted too by small features like the police radios making noise, and the constant rotating of their lights. There's something that feels very chilling about this map, especially with the intro Halloween theme as you load in. It feels like a captured moment from the film to an extent. This map only gets just above Badham because I feel there was more of an effort to make you feel like you're walking down a street in Haddonfield, like in the film. When or if this map gets a visual update, I think it will definitely stand out a lot more and feel more impressive to move around in. Raccoon City Police Station is probably the best example of a visually well adapted map, basically mirroring spot on what the RPD looks like within the Resident Evil 2 remake, which is the version it's based off of. There's only small adjustments to how the map flows within Resident Evil 2, such as a few broken open walls and entity corruption blocking off some of the upper areas of the building. Weirdly though, behavior went wrong here, I think at least, by being far too faithful to the RPD. The RPD at the end of the day was built for Resident Evil 2 and not for Dead by Daylight, so the near complete copy and recreation that's achieved in DBD doesn't quite work even though it looks amazing. Gameplay wise, this map is a bit of a disaster, not only due to its overwhelming size, but further because of its tight and labyrinth-like hallways, and also that it has multiple floors. As indoor maps go, I don't think this map would be that bad if it was maybe about a quarter of the size it is currently. Despite this, the size and verticality are the main issues, and the devs did a decent job at trying to adapt parts at least, doing things like breaking open walls or adding vault spots, which are all in very natural and fitting locations, which I like a lot. The ambience of this map is also spot on to how Resident Evil 2 feels, with the rain falling outside, the growl of zombies at the barricades, and generally just a good recapturing of feeling loneliness inside of the grand building that is the RPD. Hawkins National Laboratory is a strange area to adapt from Stranger Things, because I feel like even within the show there's never a particularly clear layout for how it looks or feels, so it's quite hard to judge how faithful the devs have really been to the original look of the lab. And this map, in my opinion, is actually not too faithful of an adaptation. My reasoning for this is that largely this map feels too over-designed, if that makes sense. It doesn't look natural enough to be the lab from the show. It feels like things have been shifted around and such. Many of the rooms don't look like rooms you'd find in a lab, but specially designed areas that don't really fit into a lab. There's rooms with strangely shaped walkways with odd positioning for staircases, staircases, which isn't a result of the lab's collapse, but that it's just laid out that way to begin with, which is kinda weird to me. I don't know, maybe it's like this in the show as well. One room I think they did a really great job on is the portal room, which not only feels visually faithful, but also has a fun design without feeling unnatural and out of place like other parts of the map. Further, the visual textures of everything on the map are spot on and definitely capture the feel of the Hawkins laboratory. Just not the shape or specifics, I guess. In terms of Stranger Things and its atmosphere though, this map is pretty spot on, which I think is definitely worth a lot, even if I think there was quite a lot of interpretation involved. But hey, maybe that's not such a bad thing. The Gideon meat plant is relatively well adapted as a map with quite a good layout for reflecting the feel of Saw and the traps of John Kramer. Throughout the map you can find these different test chambers for the reverse bear traps, locked into cages, and even a whole workshop filled with sheets of designs sprawled across workstations. Further, there's inclusion of the bathroom where the trial in the first Saw happened, with the bodies remaining from how that all ended. It's honestly really cool. There's also great dynamic features in this map, like the big doors that open when a generator is completed. Also, the map layout is just very unique, featuring different squares making up a larger square, with holes everywhere from floor to floor, and distinct areas like the large drop down in the corner of the map. Despite this being a map with lots of repeated tiles and surroundings, the area within them is quite different, and there's a bunch of different points of interest, as it were, to give callouts and help you find your way around. I think for gameplay it's broadly adapted okay, with some issues to do with breakable wall placements, a lack of vaults, and an abundance of pallets. All in all though, I think the map was done pretty well. Midwich Elementary I think is the best adapted map, and largely for the reason that I think it nails being a faithful recreation, but it adapts it well enough for fun play for Dead by Daylight as a game. One thing that was so well done for this map that I've briefly touched on for the others is the ambience and feel that is recaptured and created. You can tell that when this map was made there was a lot of love put in when it came to the detail and just the general feel you get, the atmosphere. From the siren you hear as you spawn in, to the bodies that collapse out of lockers, or creepy cries you can hear as you run through the trial. This is one of the most creepy, if not the creepiest map in the game. The atmosphere is really amazing. There is of course some things left to be desired when it comes to this map's balance, but I think for the structure they were adapting, they did a pretty good job at slightly changing different parts to fit better with the gameplay. And they incorporated different things like the desks in the classroom to use as looping structures, or big piles of meat that fit right in with the other Silent Hill gore. The loops feel embedded within the map rather than pasted on top of the pre-existing layout, and I think that's really well done. This map is also quite a nice size, and having the combo of indoor and multi-floor, it doesn't feel too complicated or frustrating to navigate, which is always good. Alright, well that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and please do drop your own thoughts down below. Thanks, and goodbye.